So here we are for part 2 of which killers would fight the entity. I said in a previous video if it did well and the people wanted it, I would do a part 2 for all of the cosmetic killers. So yeah, seems like people like that well enough, so here we are. So what are the cosmetic killers, or as my title says, the legendary killers? I'm aware that legendary is only one of the rarities for the various killers we're going to talk about in this video, but I need a catchy title, and saying ultra rare, legendary, visceral killers would be quite a mouthful and pretty bloated. So we're going with legendary. Thank you, Behavior, for making that clear and easy. Anyways, for those unaware, I did a previous video where I went over the lore of every single killer in Dead by Daylight at the time, to determine who they are as a character to see if a civil war broke out in the entity's realm, who would be standing on each side. This is a video for killers who are their own unique characters but are just skins for previous killers, like Tiffany Valentine being a skin for Chucky, but still her own character with her own voice and motivations. There are going to be spoilers within this video. At the start of each character's description, I'm going to have their name on screen, and if I feel that there's spoilers or major spoilers for their story or the story surrounding them, you will see it on screen and you can skip if you want. If there are no spoilers on the screen at the beginning of their description, you're safe to listen without the story being spoiled. If this video does well, I'll think about creating a third part where we actually talk about the Civil War and how it would play out, and which side would come out victorious. So if you would like to see that, or just enjoyed this video at all, please hit that like button. A second for you, and a lot of help for me. Oh, and one more thing before we start, in regards to the white eyes theory. The white eyes theory being that the entity is visually manipulating the survivor's appearance, or even the world's appearance, to make the killers more incentivized to kill and not think about what they're doing. An example for Rin Yamaoka, the spirit, actually seeing the survivors all as her father, making her angry all the time and trying to kill them. This isn't confirmed. White eyes theory is just a theory. It's a cool theory, but we don't have it confirmed, and it's not like one of those we're just not told about it, but it's very obvious it's happening, because there is a lot of holes in the white eyes theory, so I can't just go off assumptions of a theory maybe being right. I have to make it as logical as possible, that the killers see everything that we're actually seeing, that their vision is not obscured, and all the choices they're making can be through manipulation, but it's not the entity tricking them into thinking it's somebody else. I just had to address that because that was a huge comment in the last video, and I understand, but white eyes is just a theory. But that is enough talking, so let's find out which cosmetic killers would fight the entity.
I'm Krampus, bitch! I'll do whatever I please. This is my expertise. Round the world, it's all the same. Children freeze when they hear my name. Krampus, please don't beat me so. But do I listen? Sadly, no.
Deep in the cold nights during Christmas time, in the areas of the Germanic people of what we now know as Germany, Austria, adjacent areas, dwells the half-goat, half-demon companion of Saint Nicholas, who instead of giving out gifts and joy to all the little boys and girls, doles out ass whippings with bundles of birch wood. If laws and their consequences were turned into Christmas critters, Krampus would be corporal punishment. And in the case of really bad kids, like those who stay up past their bedtime to play Fortnite and say bad words to strangers online, he doles out capital punishment. Instead of just getting your cheeks whipped to the color of tomatoes, you're crammed into his basket and carried off to what we can probably guess would be Santa's workshop, but with broken glass and Legos scattered everywhere. A place of pure pain and punishment for those who have really misbehaved. The myth differs from place to place and person to person, but with most of them, the worst of the worst children will likely share the fate of a Christmas ham.
This sandwich tastes so young and impudent.
The best part of this whole deal is that Saint Nick is in on it, allowing Krampus to only harm and kidnap those on the naughty list, after probably letting Krampus take a little bit of a peek at it. Nowadays, parents say if you're bad, Santa will give you no gifts and leave you coal in your stocking. But it doesn't really carry the same weight as if you misbehave, you will be beaten by a demon and taken away and killed. One seems slightly more harsh than the other. Krampus's whole identity is being the one truly keeping kids good. Their whole purpose in life just keeping kids in line by making their actions have legitimate, disproportionate, but legitimate consequences. Krampus probably thinks that they're the good guy in this scenario. So when it comes to Krampus in the entity's realm, it seems like to me they would not really feel fulfilled hunting and killing grown adults, whether they are naughty or not. They could get some satisfaction about punishing survivors, especially if the entity convinces the Krampus that they are guilty, but with time, that would fade, and the Krampus's true passion for killing children, disciplining children, would drive them to free themselves, and in a sixth sense of judgment, may see the entity as more guilty and worthy of punishment than any of the survivors in the trial. They may be neutral, but I'm gonna go with my gut and say the Krampus would be anti-entity. There is a lot of bad kids who they need to get to work on, and the entity is standing in their way.
Don't you look lovely?
I could go on some big tangent about the themes of Baba Yaga, some lore about her misadventures with many young and lost woods explorers, but the best way to show you what Baba Yaga is all about is this clip.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little soul, too!
So imagine every woods witch trope and story you have ever seen in fiction and media. Some lost explorer venturing deep into the dark part of the woods everyone tells them to avoid, because there resides a witch who will eat your children, steal your soul, and enslave you for eternity. Maybe even tear you into many pieces and craft you into a scrapbook where she keeps all of her vacation photos. Baba Yaga, as far as I'm aware, is the origin of this trope, or at least is the most popular and well-spread version of the wood witch folklore. Her lore is bent out of shape here and there from writer and storyteller alike, but there is something special and unique about her story that stays consistent, and that is her house. If you're a fan of Ghibli films, it may seem familiar to you. One of the nicknames for it is the Dancing Hut of Baba Yaga, a basic old-world wooden hut sitting on top of two large bird legs, constantly spinning in circles and not laying down on the ground until hearing this magic verse. Little house, turn your back on the forest and turn towards me. Her home is stocked filled with meats and wines and magical artifacts, basically every mystical witch home you can think of. But Baba Yaga, even though being the great
One eternity later.
great grandmother of witch lore, has some more distinct and fascinating special lore around her. Also flies around in a giant mortar and steers it around with a broom. It leads me to believe that later storytellers saw this and thought, that looks dumb as hell. Let's just say she rode on the broom and everyone thought that was a great idea and totally more scary. So now, a couple hundred years later, we have 30-year-olds sticking brooms between their legs and playing a fictional sport from a kid's book. Baba Yaga is truly a monster. Well, not exactly. While Baba Yaga can be cartoonishly evil, as yes, she does kill people and the children that even look at her funny, or if she has a bad headache that day, she also has her own set of rules to live by, and those that satisfy it to her satisfaction can keep their lives and even get a favor from Baba Yaga herself. She makes deals with humans and even employs them and helps them if she likes them well enough. She doesn't take any shit and she won't give you any unless you piss her off. So where does Baba Yaga stand when it comes to the entity? I think Baba Yaga would likely get annoyed with the entity daring to try and control her and make her act against her own agency. I think she would stand one of the best chances at actually being able to figure out how to escape from the entity's realm, and maybe even beat the entity itself. I don't see her cowering away, in fact maybe even enlisting a few survivors to help her, as long as they don't piss her off. She would likely help lead the charge to fight against the entity. I have no doubt in saying that Baba Yaga would be very anti-entity.
Atlanta, where are you?
Oh, I'm just over here with the Minotaur!
The Minotaur, or for the enlightened few, Asterion, not the video game character. This man-beast resides in the labyrinth of the Greek island known as Crete. The story of how the king of Crete, Minos, became the stepdaddy to the monster of myth is basically how every story involving Greek gods goes down. Tons of pettiness, cause no one does petty like the Greek gods. The god of the seas, Poseidon, sends King Minos a bull to be sacrificed, and Minos, like the smart guy he is, said,
"Nah, I'm gonna do my own thing,"
and chose to keep the bull alive. So Poseidon said, if you love that bull so much, you shouldn't be the only one, and caused Minos' wife to pull a Whitney, Wisconsin and fall in love with the bull, which after some disturbing imagery caused her to birth a half-man, half-bull we know as the Minotaur. So now you have a history lesson in some of the origins of the term cuck, and why the guy is often referred to as a bull. Congratulations, your brain is a little more rotted than before. Minos, after seeing the monster that his wife had birthed, had the labyrinth built to house the Minotaur so it could never escape, and no eyes may peer on the shame that Poseidon put upon the family. The Minotaur was often regarded as more of a beast than man, mindless and simple with a taste for human flesh. How much was nature and how much was nurture of being locked deep, underground in the darkness? It's hard to say, but regardless, the end result was that of an angry beast that knows no life outside its walls and the human offerings it dined on. I don't see reasoning or teamwork being possible with the Minotaur. Deep thoughts outside of slaughter might be too difficult to understand for him, so I see the Minotaur being pro-entity. Not out of want, but rather being too simple to do otherwise. A mere tool for the entity. It lives for its human sacrifices.
Don't look at me, I don't have any money.
Pay him. Here.
The Ferryman of the underworld, or as his friends call him, Charon, or Karen, or Heron. I see many different ways people pronounce it, but I'm gonna go with Heron, since I really don't want to say Karen more than 3 times. I'm worried it works like Beetlejuice or Biggie Smalls and I might accidentally summon one. So Heron it is. Heron, the child of Cerberus and Nyx, they were like the earliest of the early gods in the Greek pantheon. Poor Charon though kinda got the short end of the stick. While being a child of such powerful figures, is not actually considered a god, but rather an underworld entity, whose eternal existence is that of a lowly toll collector. Truly just a working man doing his job and doing it well. No complaining, just working. His role in the life cycle is carrying the souls of the dead across the river Styx so they can see Hades to face judgment to either enter Elysium, heaven, or Tartarus, hell. His only ask is the cost of a single coin, placed in the mouth of the dead in the living world. In the case of those unable to pay the toll, Heron took on a second job as a bouncer, beating anyone trying to gain passage without paying. That'll teach those poors for trying to get to heaven. I've said a lot about the world around Heron, but what about the man himself? What is he like? What does he like? What's his perspective? Well, sorry to burst your bubble, but surprisingly, a man who centers his whole existence and personality around doing his job is not the most interesting or well-defined of characters. He's a pretty boring person who, if he did have to make a conversation, he would probably talk about how much he likes the wood his boat is made out of at his job as the ferryman. And after the 15th wow man, that's crazy, he still refuses to stop talking about his job as the ferryman. I'm pretty confident that he hates being in the entity's realm for the sole reason that there is hardly any boats nor water to be seen, leaving him in a constant panic attack about all the work he's missing out on. Call him anti-entity because he has a job to do, and that's not here. Eddie is a strange fellow, because when you're talking about Eddie, everyone probably has a different image of him in their head. Whether that's Royal Guard Eddie, Mech Commando Eddie, even a Galactus-sized Eddie throwing the Earth like a baseball. As much as it will surprise you and even me when researching it all, it seems that those are all canon, and the same-ish Eddie. They all share the same personality, the love of mischief and murder. Basically anything Eddie wants, Eddie does. They're all their own being, but basically just shards of the original soul of Eddie, or the original being of Eddie. It is shown that Eddie is considered to be the literal physical embodiment of free will itself. So it makes sense that Eddie is such a menace. Generally, free will does not play well with morals and laws and not being sadistic. Being as he is free will, sometimes he can achieve some good, but really only when it makes Eddie happy, and only when he is happy. And playing by somebody else's rules is something that generally is not going to make Eddie happy. Perhaps he willingly joined the entity's realm to see what all this systematic murder, slavery was all about, but eventually he's gonna get bored and want to leave to do other things. Seeing how controlling the entity is, I doubt it's going to let Eddie go willingly, leaving him stuck in the entity's realm against his free will. Nobody tells Eddie what to do but Eddie. And Eddie is going to leave this place, and if that means teaming up with others, that's something Eddie has done in the past to regain his powers, so he'll do it again to gain his freedom. Eddie is anti-entity.
You don't get away that easily.
Good God, William. What have you done?
She is my creation!
William Birkin, a genius virologist, and a head researcher for the multinational conglomerate known as the Umbrella Corporation, who helped improving the T-virus and discovering the G-virus, alongside creating several BOWs, bioorganic weapons, such as the Hunter Alpha, and many more crimes against not only nature, but my 6-year-old sanity. Birkin was completing his work on the G-virus and attempting to take it and sell out the Umbrella Corporation, but was intercepted by Hunk and his Alpha team, who were tasked with acquiring the G-virus from Birkin and taking him alive if possible. Birkin didn't really vibe with the idea of his work being stolen and tried to kill the Alpha team with a handgun, but obviously got lit up like a Christmas tree belonging to a family with way too much enthusiasm for the holiday season. While he was dying, he injected himself with a sample of the G-virus he had on him, mutating his body till he eventually just becomes a giant mouth, but that's a story for another day. The Birkin we come to know in Dead by Daylight is actually quite early within his transformation cycle, where control between his human side and his mutated side are in conflict with one another. Birkin can think and feel and can mentally motivate himself to do things, but has little actual control over his body's actions. During this stage in his slowly mutating form, its main focus is to destroy anything that's not the G-virus it comes across, while also searching for suitable breeding material to spread the G-virus further. And that's why you can find him searching for his daughter Sherry for most of Resident Evil 2. Yeah, her being so genetically similar to him is a plus for Birkin's new form. And yes, before you ask, his favorite Game of Thrones house was the Targaryens. I don't know how you guessed that, but you are right. It's probably all the blonde going on. This big mess of what Birkin is was the form that was brought into the fog. So does Birkin like being in the entity's realm? No, probably not. Both his body and mind want to be somewhere else, not in an eternal murder game where the body cannot mutate or spread to other hosts. But the issue with that is even with the small fragment of humanity still shining through Birkin, he's still more animal-like monster than anything. He could not actually grasp the concept of rebelling or fighting for anything. He has no master besides the G-virus, and its aim to kill and mutate anything it sees. So while there would be a struggle, Birkin is in no state to actually do anything about it, leaving him more in a neutral state where it's whatever is in front of him will get his attention. Not pro-entity, not anti-entity, but neutral.
Come on! Birkin injected himself with the G-Virus. There's nothing you can do! Get out of here and make a full report to management! What about you, sir? I lost the sample. I'm going back for it.
Hunk, or by more accurate terminology, literally him. So much of a main character badass that the only reason the Resident Evil series has never brought him back outside of a spin-off or extra game modes is because they knew they would either have to kill off all the other main characters or force them to retire out of shame next to the Grim Reaper himself, Hunk. Almost every mission he went on, he'd be the only one to return alive and successful. This happens so often, I think the people at Umbrella believe Hunk killed all of his team members himself just for the bragging rights. And the only reason they never got rid of him is because they feared him, and he gets the job done. So when they needed the G-Virus retrieved from William Birkin in Raccoon City, they had Alpha Leader Hunk and a few other operatives they probably considered KIA before even assigning them to the mission. They sent Hunk because Hunk always succeeds and Hunk always lives. And to the surprise of no one, Hunk survived a week with the sample in hand, almost effortlessly slipping by what seemed like God himself putting every possible obstacle in his path to stop him, and he just walked in as he always does. Hunk escapes the city with the sample and continues life as usual. After Umbrella falls, Hunk doesn't really sweat it in the slightest, and becomes, as described, a legendary mercenary, developing special tactics and equipment so other people could have some slim hope to imitate Hunk and his zombie-killing prowess. So where does Hunk fall in loyalty when it comes to the entity? On one hand, he does whatever the task he's assigned to completion, so he could be the entity's ultimate weapon. Or he could follow Wesker's lead and attempt to fight against the entity. My gut tells me that Hunk doesn't really want to work for anything that is a non-human, as BOWs have probably left a bad taste in his mouth for non-humans. He'll probably work with Wesker and follow the orders he needs to kill this murder god. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Hunk was the last one standing at the end of it all, as he always is.
Mission accomplished. The survival rate was 4%, and valuable human resources were lost. But that is war. The mission objective takes priority over everything else. Holding to that principle is why I have never failed a mission.
I don't even need to explain Naughty Bear's motivation for the massive amounts of unbuilding of bears he does, as this clip actually sums it up pretty perfectly.
I think we've had enough of your jokes.
What do you get?
I don't think so.
When you cross
I think
a
we're
mentally
done
ill
with your
loner
jokes.
with
That's
a
it.
society that abandons him and treats him like trash!
Call the police,
I'll
Gene.
tell you what you get!
Call the police.
You get what you fucking deserve!
Oh dear, poor naughty.
Naughty Bear is what happens when you cross a school unaliver with a cuddly teddy bear. An absolute fluff bath. Naughty is a misunderstood bear who had trouble connecting and befriending other bears and was often bullied by them. The time before we know him as Naughty Bear is cloudy, so it's hard to know if he was ostracized for a rightful reason or if he's just a victim of society's cruel expectations and mob mentality to dogpile whoever is considered the punching bag. Even still, he is named Naughty Bear for a reason. He may just want to befriend the other bears, but responding to being teased for attending a birthday party you weren't invited to with mass defluffing is not the sign of a mentally well bear. But if that wasn't sign enough, maybe the cheery English announcer in his head urging him to teach the other bears a lesson in the way of bear slaughter will convince you that he's not quite right. I like the theory that since Naughty Bear was created by behavior before they were called behavior, the announcer in Naughty Bear's head is actually the entity manipulating Naughty into slowly becoming a monster, much in the way that the entity did with the plague, to create a ruthless killer that would excel in the trials and be as loyal as possible. When Naughty was included into Dead by Daylight, the announcer is right there with him. Naughty's not purely evil, and the other bears are certainly not completely victims, as throughout the game, Naughty Bear stops corrupt and evil bears from not only trying to hurt him, but harm other bears and the environment. Even near the end of the game, he saves the bear world from aliens. After saving the day, a huge ceremony is held for Naughty Bear as a massive thank you, where Naughty gets cake thrown in his face and the entire party just laughs and laughs, mocking Naughty again, dashing his hopes that he would be welcomed into Bear Society. This just showed Naughty that no matter what he did, they would never be friends with him. Are the bears just cruel fluffholes? Probably. But seeing how even before saving the day, Naughty was stacking up so many bodies you could build a wall out of them from all over the island. So it kind of makes sense they might not be so quick to forgive him. Regardless, at the end of the day, Naughty gave up in attempting to be friends and set his sights solely on revenge and what the words of the narrator tell him. Naughty now calls the entity's realm home. Naughty no longer is looking for the good, but only the pain he can give to everyone else, the true naughty ones. As the only companion he ever needs is the announcer, who is always there for him. And the announcer really likes to tell Naughty to go get those pesky survivors. So in my opinion, Naughty Bear is pro-entity. The Chatterer, Hell's right-hand man, known for his lack of vitamin C and being gay as fuck. Dead by Daylight's first canonically gay character is not one a lot of people talk about, which makes sense as he can only communicate with the sounds of his teeth slamming into one another. Before becoming the angel with the stunning smile, the Chatterer went by a different name, that of Jim. Just Jim. No last name really matters to Jim as he wants to leave that part of his life behind him. When he was just a wee lad, he killed his abusive father and framed his mother for it, which makes me think she was probably quite the scumbag as well. Hopefully. This murder framing caused him to be sent to an orphanage, where he regularly prayed to God to be loved, for affection. And as a lot of orphans do with the little options afforded to them, fell into a life of prostitution, where he was very successful and sought after for his beauty, being considered very attractive, which all of his clients would constantly remind him of. Instead of taking pride in his natural beauty he was gifted, he grew a resentment for it, as it became more and more apparent that the love and affection he was a part of was all completely surface level. No one loved Jim for who he was on the inside, but purely his packaging. When asked what his deepest desire was, he would answer that he wanted to be loved, but that's no longer what his reply would be. He would say, "I want to be ugly, because if I was ugly, maybe people would be forced to love me for what I am on the inside, since no one would be able to love me for my appearance." Jim becomes entangled with the lament configuration after a client had given him one during a meeting of theirs, and he went on to spread its influence in what he believes is service to the god of pain and desire. Eventually he becomes tasked by a fellow servant of hell to get his young love Seth to solve the configuration after finding him several years later after Jim had fled control of his pimp, who in pure rage of Jim's abandonment blinded Seth, since he was the closest person to Jim. Instead of pushing the lament configuration on Seth, Jim started hitting it from the back midway through. When Seth started to tell him that he hates him, he truly hates Jim, and leaves without opening the lament configuration. I imagine Jim being told by the one person he may have considered to have loved him at one point that he actually despises him was quite painful, and with that pain is granted his desire, and is disfigured so much that he hardly even appears to be a human anymore, with most of his facial features being torn away and replaced with empty, blank flesh. Except for the chattering of his teeth. All beauty stripped away, Jim was finally ugly, but not truly happy. He was proficient in torture and heavily loyal to Pinhead, even helping stop a civil war in Hell. Through his acts of commitment and skill, the Chatterer became a high-ranking and powerful Cenobite. It does appear later, though, that the Chatterer was loyal through manipulation rather than full commitment. After becoming aware of their human lives and memories, Pinhead's gash, Chatterer included, betray the Leviathan to protect Kirsty Cotton for reminding them of their true selves. So where does the Chatterer fall when it comes to the entity? Both versions of the Chatterer I see telling the entity to go screw itself. If he remains loyal to Hell and Pinhead, he will attempt to leave the realm of the entity to get back to Leviathan. Or he's reminded of who Jim really is, he will not be happy taking part in the entity's games. He'll probably rebel just like he did when defending Kirsty Cotton, and I fully feel that the Chatterer is anti-entity. The Jabberwockies are an American hip-hop dance group who became quite well known after their appearance and win of America's Best Dance Crew, hosted by Mario Lopez of "'Cause I'm Saved by the Bell." They were well known for their gimmick of wearing masks and gloves during their dances, but also being exceptional performers with very fluid and in-sync routines. It's no surprise that they're still active to this day, gaining tons of work in commercials and other forms of media. Huh? No. Really? Oh crap. Okay, this is kind of embarrassing. I was just told by my producer that those are the Jabberwockies, and I'm supposed to be talking about the Jabberwock from, the poem The Jabberwocky in Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. Okay, that makes a lot of sense actually. A chimera beast of various animals being a character added as a skin for the artist over a dance troupe. Yeah, it's all making a lot more sense. Okay, so let me tell you about the in-depth character of the Jabberwock. Oh, there doesn't really appear to be any in-depthness of this creature. It's just a monster we hear about for a couple verses that is slain by some young hero who knows how long ago. There have been many versions of the Jabberwock through adaptations of Alice in Wonderland, whether movie, miniseries, video game probably. But the one that is referenced in Dead by Daylight is from the poem, so yeah, the Jabberwock is just a wild beast. So as far as I can tell, neutral. The Alien Queen is the big lady of the Xenos, who gives all the little drones orders. Whatever she says goes, meaning that the Xenomorphs below her don't really have much choice in the matter, whether they want to be pro or anti-entity. She commands them and they act. She is the top dog, but she's not the toppest dog. She may be a queen, but the queen is no empress. Seeing how there is a queen xenomorph running around, that must mean that the entity has somehow gained control and tricked the queen into treating the entity as an empress alien, meaning any threat that the entity wants gone will be eliminated. Little questions asked. Maybe if an empress can reclaim control over the queen, they would turn sides, but that's a big maybe. So as of now, the entity has firm control over tons of nature's apex predators. Pro entity. The Inoculated Xeno. My assumption about the Inoculated Xenomorph is that it would behave very similar to the common Xenomorph that we are all aware of, but likely more violent and independent. It'd be like if you tried to take a rabies-infected raccoon and shook it in a box for half an hour, then tried to give it a hug. Just pure chaos and rage and blood and orange drippings everywhere. The difference, besides being a little bit more on the pissy side, I think the Inoculated Xeno has become so corrupted that the tie to the greater hive mind would be severed. Either because its DNA or whatever makes up this monstrosity is so twisted, it can't communicate with the queen above, or it's become so corrupted that the hive would sever the connection as to not bring something in that could infect the rest of the hive. The Inoculated Xeno, too animalistic to actually follow orders, making this the most wild of wild animals you could get. Not pro, not anti, but a neutral threat. The cloned Xenomorph. A smarter variant of the regular Xenomorph due to a distinctly different incorporation of human DNA. It has a similar behavior to other Xenomorphs when it comes to hierarchy. Since these are altered Xenomorphs, it would make them more likely to stay loyal. It would be easier to convince them that the entity is their queen, since no regular Xenomorph queens would lay claim to their existence. So that's another weapon at the entity's disposal. Pro-entity. The Were-Elk is the most recent visceral skin added to Dead by Daylight, and has a lot of obscure lore and small details surrounding it, and even more theories. So this means there's going to be a lot more speculation around it than normal, so bear with me. I'll cover a couple different theories about the Were-Elk, but I will be basing its placement on what I believe the most likely theory to be. Does that mean I'm right? No one really has the answer besides the devs, so if you think otherwise, that's alright. It's just too bad that you're wrong and I'm right though. Alright, let's talk about it. The Were-Elk is a skin for the huntress that is considered its own being. Apparently, the elk carries objects from slain victims, as the torso cosmetic is called macabre trophies, like having a rifle on its back and wearing a torn up military coat. But most notably, two masks, one of the huntress and the second is a bear mask, which is actually a reused asset from the Red Queen cosmetic. This makes many people think that the Were-Elk actually slayed the huntress and took her stuff. But why the bear mask? Why would there be a similar looking mask to the huntress's rabbit? Did the Were-Elk kill several huntresses that wore different masks? Or is it possibly a mask that the huntress's mother wore? A mother bear, while her daughter was her little rabbit. Some people think this character is the elk that killed the huntress's mother, or is the huntress's mother, due to the Mori being similar to how the huntress's mother died, being hoisted up on the elk's antlers. People think that the Were-Elk is either the huntress or her mother for the big hint that the Were-Elk also hums the lullaby the huntress does, which was actually her mother's dying words, her dying lullaby. Her mother sang to her as she bled out in the huntress's arms. What I believe the Were-Elk to be is possible two options, and I'm not sure which one I lean towards more, but there is one I like more. I believe that the Were-Elk is the personification of the legend of the huntress. From the perspective of those villagers and soldiers that the huntress had hunted, or at least knew about her legend. The creature that stalks the forest humming, killing beast and man alike without much effort at all. They probably believe it to be a literal monster. Who would believe some human woman would be capable of butchering groups of people and even fighting bears? Even if it is a human, it has to be some sort of shapeshifter who can transform into a beast. The stories that these villagers tell spreads and becomes like folklore, and through this massive amount of belief, this creature was formed. Much like the unknown and the dredge are speculated to be created off fear and stories shared and believed, manifesting into an actual beast through the entity's realm or some other dark magic. The Were-Elk skin is kinda cool in this way, as it was a very popular theory around the Huntress for many years that she was secretly a werewolf or a Bowdark. Basically a human with animal-like powers and strength akin to lycanthropy. So it could be what the fans of Dead by Daylight believe the Huntress to be, could be what the survivors believe as well. Even though the Huntress is very much a human, she's likely still one of the most lethal and terrifying killers in the realm. So the survivors could believe that she's some sort of animal-human hybrid, a Were-Elk, as many of her cosmetics appear to be animals with a human body. Through this fear and belief, the Were-Elk was born to the realm, wearing the skeleton of the Huntress, but a different beast entirely. Or the easier answer that the Were-Elk is just the Huntress from another multiverse, where she's actually a Bowdark-like creature. But personally, I like to lean towards the Were-Elk being a creature created out of myth, to physical form of what people actually think the Huntress is. So where does this leave that creature? In my opinion, I think similar to the Huntress, it would be an independent entity, not obeying the rules of some god. It would not fight for the entity or actually fight for some sort of greater goal. It cares about its own independent hunt, protecting itself, maybe protecting its territory. So that's why I believe the Were-Elk to be neutral.
What are you doing? What would Martha Stewart say?
Fuck Martha Stewart! Martha Stewart can kiss my shiny plastic butt!
This is a very challenging one to do, as Tiffany's character is so back and forth with her feelings for Chucky that depending on when you ask her, she could be head over heels with doing anything that he asks, to trying to kill him and doing anything she can to spite him. This doesn't mean badly written, no. She is perfectly written. Not as a crazy bitch, but the crazy bitch. The queen of crazy. She loves murder and mayhem, but on the other hand finds it to be bad and toxic, so much so that she tries to quit it like an addiction to set a good example for Glenda, but then backslides and attempts to help Chucky conquer and spread chaos all over the world. She's so unpredictable, it almost makes her scarier than Chucky himself, as you never know if she's going to help you out or cut you open with a nail file. The Tiffany that is in the entity's realm is from Bride of Chucky, seemingly mid-journey when her and Chucky were going to find bodies to become human again. From that alone, I don't think Tiff would be happy in the entity's realm, even if she was on the same page as Chucky. She wants to go home, be human, have a family with Chucky, and probably pick up a few kills along the way. The conflict comes from that, and I think even at this point in his life when Chucky was still trying and hoping to get his body back, after seeing what the entity offers him, he would like to stay put and indulge in killing forever. Even if it isn't on his terms, I do think he would prefer to stay and live for possibly ever doing the one thing he loves more than anything. That conflicts with Tiffany. I don't see her wanting that. She could change her mind and flip-flop, sure, but she would eventually understand that Chucky does not care about her or her feelings and will stay here forever even though that's not what she wants. So when Tiff gets mad at Chucky, she doesn't just leave him like a normal person would. No, she will sabotage and try and kill him herself. Off purely spite alone, I see her being anti-entity, but paired with her wanting to be human again and possibly getting that white picket fence with Martha Stewart on the television, she would be anti-entity for herself. She may flip to pro for Chucky, but more often than not, I think she would follow her own path, so I'm gonna say anti-entity. Eating any humans who happen to stumble upon them or the pack while within the woods. They are extremely hostile that even being adult Girl Scouts are not enough to spare you if you're unlucky enough to find them. So when the entity picked up a Mordeo for use in the trials, it basically picked up a wild animal that listens to whoever the alpha of the pack is and feeds it some of those table scraps. It seems like right now that is the entity. It's hard to tell exactly what the relationship is between the Mordeo and the entity, but it seems to follow the rules it's given to hook rather than eat. So unless the Mordeo Queen can establish a connection with its thralls, I would say the Mordeo stays in service to the entity, following their lead. I'ma say pro-entity. The Birch is a nature demon that works a lot like a hitman. If the hitman had a really convoluted way to actually pick his target, that could backfire very easily. It's just way more trouble than it's worth. To seek the help of the Birch, you must be a person with love in your heart, whatever that means, and create a special talisman saying the magic words. Perfect, now all you have to do is have someone break the talisman you created. To summon the Birch, and she'll turn them inside out, lickety-split. Doesn't matter if they're not the target you intended, or maybe they're even a good person with love in their heart. Doesn't matter, the first schmuck to break it is worm food. So if the Birch was in the realm, what side would she be on? I believe neutral is the best place to put her, until one side could get the other side to break the talisman. Does the entity even have a heart? If it does, I'm sure its love for its adopted child Dredgy could be enough to get the Birch on board, but it would be just as easy for the survivors to do the same thing, and sick the Birch on a killer, or perhaps the entity if the survivors are clever enough. I'm gonna play it safe, and I'm gonna say the Birch is neutral. The Looksee may not have eyes, but he can definitely see your regrets. You ever try and go to sleep and you happen to just think of something really cringe you did like 5 years ago? Yeah, you just made a terrible decision, and the Looksee very happy. He gives you a small window of time to get over what emotional baggage you may have, or he'll come take it for you, and your life will be included. It seems pretty cut and dry to me. Whoever has guilt and remorse or regret will be an enemy of the Looksee. And I don't think the entity has any of that. Meaning he has little reason to oppose the entity, and all the reason they keep feeding on the survivors in the trial. So it's safe to bet that the Looksee would be neutral, but only in the sense that it has no reason to attack the entity, but won't listen to any of the orders. Just murking any survivor, or killer even, that it happens to come across, that's harboring that regret and guilt deep inside. So I'm gonna say definitely neutral. Eren Yeager, a skin for the Trapper. For all of you who play only console and PC Dead by Daylight are probably looking at me pretty confused. The Dwight skin? DBD Mobile gets a lot of little goodies that us core gamers never are going to enjoy, and we just have to sit and watch with envy. The Attack Titan is an exclusive DBD mobile skin. There might be a bunch of characters in mobile that I'm not aware of who could fit into this video, but I thought since I was talking about Attack on Titan already, I might as well include it. And totally not to show you what we're never going to get. Look at it! Eren Yeager is from a small town within Wall Maria on Paradise Island, where he and his two best friends, Armin Arlet and Mikasa Ackerman, go about their lives without any worries or life-changing trauma. After Eren loses his family, his home, and most importantly, his innocence. Actually, I was lost a long time ago, but let's not talk about that right now. Eren's world is completely flipped upside down, with his goal of being an adventurer escaping the walls that have confined him his whole life, that keep him from the world undiscovered, to a hateful and revenge-fueled soldier who threw away his curiosity of the story about the great body of water as far as the eye can see for the blood of every Titan he can get his hands on. Well, not blood so much as steam, but you understand what I mean. A lot happens to Eren and his friends. Like him figuring out he actually has a 15-meter man inside of him.
Phrasing?
Eren struggles with being a screw-up of the man he wants to be and needs to be to protect his people, out of reach due to his own fear and ineptitude. Many die to protect Eren, but all he ever wanted was to die protecting them. His only goal to kill all the Titans and free all of his people. He moved forward with his dream while deep inside knowing that he was not the kind of person to actually achieve it. He feels like an idiot who inherited the world and the responsibility of it. Eventually, the world Eren knows and the goals he held are changed completely. He accumulates vast power not thought possible, and a full view of the world's past, present, and future. A god in the body of a stupid, angry kid. A person with no right to hold any power, yet holding all of it. This revelation changes and destroys Eren's sanity and his motivations. The strings of fate holding him in place. Any action or inaction he makes will result in the death of millions. No matter what he does, he holds the responsibility of the lives of strangers and friends alike. Eren fought for freedom his whole life, to be free of the walls, the titans, the people outside the walls, and given the ultimate power to act, yet feels more trapped than ever. Walls he never knew about now in plain sight, constricting and slowly crushing him beneath the pressure. But with Eren, even if he regrets it, he's going to fight. It's hard to know when in the timeline Eren was taken, mainly because finding info on DBD Mobile, besides downloading the game, is very difficult to do. I'll do a lot for a video, but I won't spend hours trying to find a description to decipher when Eren was taken by the entity. But I'm going to assume it's near the end, when the character of Eren has fully developed, but before the ending events of Attack on Titan. Eren, who only cares about his friends, his family, his people, and of course his freedom. The entity keeping him walled in the realm, forcing him to kill, is not something Eren will stomach. If you can give Eren anything, it's that he will fight recklessly for what he thinks is right. Being free of the entity and getting home to keep his friends safe is without a doubt all he would care about. Eren is anti-entity, as fiercely anti-entity as you can get.
ここに長く居すぎてしまったんだな。バカな奴らに囲まれて、俺たちはガキで何一つ知らなかったんだよ。こんな奴らがいるなんて知らずにいれば、こんな半端なクソ野郎にならずに済んだのに。
Reiner is a sad sack of a man who hardly has his head on straight. He comes from an open-air prison known as the Internment Zone of Eldians, within the Marleyan city of Liberio. Eldians are held in the zone so they can be controlled, monitored, and discriminated against. Eldians are the descendants of people who once controlled majority of the world through blood and oppression, using the power of the Titans. Only those with Eldian blood can inherit and use Titan powers. Even if the person holding a Titan power is killed, the form will reemerge in someone else randomly who has Eldian blood. So as long as Eldians live, so do the Titans. So rather than have the Titans be in the hands of enemies, the Marleyans select and train child soldiers to take these powers, and use them in Marleyan wars and missions. Being selected as a Titan shifter is considered a great honor, and the only way to atone even a little bit for having the devil blood of being an Eldian. The family and the shifter are given a more privileged life, and less likely to be murdered by any Marleyan citizen that just wants to hate crime them that day. Cause nothing will be done. You could have your child eaten by dogs at the will of some random non-Eldian, and the only response you would hear for seeking justice would be a laugh and a painful comment about how they were lucky to die so young. Otherwise, they would grow up to be an Eldian. I only give so much detail about this system as it is core to why Reiner is who he is. Reiner is one of those kids who was accepted into the Warriors program and gained the privilege of becoming a Titan shifter. Reiner was actually half Eldian, half Marleyan, as his father was a Marleyan who impregnated his mother by accident. Reiner thought if he could become a warrior that his father would come back, that he could show him that he's not just some devil Eldian. He would do what was ever asked of him to wash away that sin. Even still, Reiner's father rejects him and his Eldian blood. This broke Reiner. Even the sacrifice of his life in service to Marley to become a warrior was not good enough to make up for him being an Eldian. When someone becomes a Titan Shifter, they only have a maximum of 13 years to live before they die, and the gift moves on to somebody else. Even after all this sacrifice, it was still not enough, leaving Reiner to regret what he did and lose his mind, or disassociate and become a warrior. That what he did will have meaning. He can still make his family and Marley proud. Reiner and a few other shifters are sent to steal the founding Titan, basically the King Titan form, so Marley can have complete control over the Titans. After many years inside the walls, where the warriors were personally responsible for the deaths of over 250,000 people, by breaking the walls to allow Titans to enter Wall Maria, Reiner and the other warriors blended in, becoming soldiers in the island's military, where they trained and became fellow soldiers alongside people like Eren Yeager. Over these years, they truly learned about who the people of the island were, and this was another dramatic change for Reiner. He continued with his mission while attempting not to face the truth that these people were not evil, but just people. And his mission was not one of honor and heroics, but one of genocide. Reiner did not face this fact until he got home, failing his mission and losing his warrior friends, and being the only one to return home. Once he's back in Marley, he's forced to face what the world truly is. The people he gave his life for hate him for how he was born, and no matter what he does, he will still be seen as trash by everyone else. He is personally the murderer of hundreds of thousands of innocents, and he sees the cycle beginning again. With new warrior recruits he is forced to mentor. He wants to die and puts a gun into his own mouth, but nothing would actually happen even if he did pull the trigger, due to his regenerative abilities. After an attack within Marley, where many Eldians die, Reiner finds somewhat of a purpose to continue on. He may feel guilt for the people he killed and the things he did, but now his friends and family are in danger. His purpose becomes keeping those he cares about alive. There is a lot more, but I think this reaches the apex of who Reiner is. He becomes aware of the systems he's a part of and the pain he has caused, the lives that he took, and the undeserved misery on all sides, with justice just being some fantasy from a children's book. But he finds purpose and the will to go on to make sure that those left he loves are safe. It no longer became a fight to prove himself or pay back some evil foe. He fights for love and to protect it. He will shoulder his guilt if it means that those he loves will be safe. But only that. Reiner does not wish to kill unless he feels he has to. In the entity's realm, he would not want to kill people. They're no threat to the people that he cares about, and his life doesn't even matter to him. He'd be fine with dying, so I see no reason why Reiner would stay to continue to kill for the entity if he didn't have to. I think he would do what he thinks is right, and that is to stop the killing and free all the trapped people in the realm and possibly escape. So I say anti-entity.
私、ビリー・タイバーはマーレ政府特使として今ここに宣言します。パラディ島勢力へ宣戦布告を。
To know Lara, you need to know who the Tyburs are. Not because their history is critical to who she is, but more so that she's hardly a character in her own right. Her personality being as fleshed out as that of an unsharpened pencil. She is made for her purpose and serves no function outside of it. She is a plot device, but her family's motivation can show us a lot of how she would uniquely face rebelling or staying loyal to the entity. Long ago, the Eldians were the top dogs of the world. Anyone who even looked at them wrong, tightened. Anyone didn't give in to them, tightened. They just got bored one day and wanted to kill something for fun? You got tightened. Eventually, as time went on and the Eldians' control of the world order became firmer, they didn't need to work with one another for warring anymore. So eventually they got bored and greedy and started a battle amongst themselves. Titan shifters fighting other Titan shifters, stealing their powers for more control of the world that the Eldian Empire had already controlled themselves anyways. The Tyburs included. Eventually, the Eldian king Karl Fritz got annoyed and said,
"Fuck off somewhere, I got work to do."
to the Eldian society as a whole, as he feels they have only caused pain and misery to the people of the world, and even when all was said and done, would still find excuses to war and kill each other. They didn't stop the cycle of violence, they perpetuated it. He wanted the Eldians to die and the Titans to disappear from the world, to have the entire Eldian Empire collapse and eventually his people to die out, so this power would just leave the world. The Tyburs, when hearing this idea from Fritz, said, alright, bet, and worked with Fritz to manipulate the world and its histories to say that the Tyburs had rebelled and fought against the Eldian Empire, and forced the Fritz to take a good amount of its people and flee to Paradise Island. The Tyburs went down in history as heroes to all those who opposed Eldians, and were treated like royalty, or nobility. Over the years, the Tyburs had maneuvered and manipulated to basically become the leaders of the Marleyan nation. Not in the literal sense, but more of the hidden power behind the scenes pulling the strings. So the Tybur family, using their power, claims it's for an agenda to slowly help Eldian relations and bring stability to the world. But seeing how they don't lift a finger to actually assist in any way to prevent Eldians from being hate-crimed and killed, without a system in place for those perpetrators to be held accountable for their crimes, their words ring hollow, and this is their attempt to virtue signal about a better, more peaceful world of tomorrow, while still warring with other nations and using Titans and allowing wholesale misery of their own people. They don't care about the innocence or injustice, but rather their status of being one of the good ones, selling their own people out so they can maintain power and luxury. They are greedy, power-hoarding liars, who even plan to wipe out all of Paradise Island just to consolidate the power of the founding Titan. Instead of peaceful negotiations with the people, they jump to war, showing their true colors. Lara is fully on this plan, with zero reservations about the death it will cause for not only the Eldians of the island, but her own people as well. How this translates to the entity's realm makes me believe when it comes to unifying and dying for a cause, Lara would not be eager to jump on it. With the deal of living for what could be eternity in the entity's realm, not as a victim, but a victor, when she only has a total of 13 years to live if she returned home. Just as the Tyburs are coward opportunists who sell out their own people for power, I would wager that Lara would be pro-entity. Not because she likes what she's doing in the trials and would probably prefer to be home, but rocking the boat and sticking their necks out for anyone besides themselves is not really the Tybur style. So I'm going to say pro-entity.
Look at this beautiful mask! Look at that! My mask is fucking beautiful! Look at that!
I had a lot of trouble writing out this section for the video, for the pure fact of how vile of a monster this particular character is. He goes by the name of H20 Delirious. In history's greatest villains, a few names come up more than the others. You got Judas, Hitler, Dan Schneider, and alongside them is H20 Delirious, an online content creator who made millions off the pain and blood of his so-called friends. He can regularly be found laughing at the misfortune of others and even killing them himself.
No! Get the hell out of my damn world!
All publicly recorded and published on his YouTube channel with 13.5 million subscribers. All of which are just so they can keep track of his carnage to make sure that they're not next. With so many videos of his crimes being publicly displayed, it wouldn't surprise me if he, by far, has the biggest body count of anyone in Dead by Daylight combined, possibly even matching the entity itself. It's hard to gauge exactly what someone of such inhumanity is capable of, but my gut feeling is that H20 Delirious would be anti-entity. Not because he wants to be free or even help people, but he either wants to kill the entity himself for sport, or take control of the entity's realm and play his sick games for all the YouTube ad revenue he can collect. I'm gonna go take a lie bath now because I just feel so dirty after saying his name so many times. Anti-entity. For those that made it this far, you have my respect, and my thanks. So what do you think? Which characters do you feel personally I got the wrong placements of? Was there anything you learned from the video that you didn't already know? Share it in the comments, because input is how I learn how to make better videos for all the viewers moving forward. And remember, if you do want to see a part 3 discussing how the Civil War would go, leave a like, maybe share the video, watch it 20 times and I'll get the message, and then spend an ungodly amount of time planning out how a civil war would happen in Dead by Daylight. But I am going to call it there because I have taken enough of your time already. But seriously, thank you all for watching. My name is Dustaroo, and I will see you all real soon. Bye-bye.